Mess with my kids, lose your house. I've M50, got 2 stepsons, who I just call my sons as I've been in their life since they 8 and 10, and are now young men. My wife and I made it a point to have a great relationship with their dad, Jason, and made sure he had a chance to be around as much as possible, even staying at our place frequently to be around his boys as he lived over an hour away and couldn't afford to live closer. Jason had a crazy ex-GF who had tried to claim they were married, variously saying common law, or that they were married in secret, or married on an Indian reservation. But he had a restraining order out against her because she was nuts and had tried various ways to screw up his life. The ex is a horrible person. She had been arrested several times for forgery and fraud. She and Jason had a fiery relationship, but he had it in his head that he should make it work as he did like her daughters and grandson. But the ex got him sent to prison for violating his probation when he left the county to go to his mom's funeral and hadn't filed an appropriate form. I'm a little unclear on this part, but she played a major role in it. After he got out several months later, she wanted him back and he wasn't having it. He made a clean break, moved to a new town, but she continued to harass him, thus leading to the restraining order. She would send texts to people pretending to be police investigating, saying he was drunk driving or taking drugs, or pretending to be friends' family to spread rumors and hurt him. She even sent texts to my kids from burner phones, pretending to be other family or friends, saying awful things about their dad. Jason died unexpectedly of a heart attack, and it was a shock to all of us. He was finally living in peace, had great relationships with friends and his sons, and was the happiest he had ever been. He didn't have much. He lived in a single wide trailer a friend had let him stay in for free, some boxes of tools, old comics, video games, D&D books and modules, mementos from his times in the Marines, and an old 2009 pickup, which on several occasions he had promised my oldest son, let's call him Paul. Jason didn't have a will, and my wife became the executor of the estate because at the time of death, both the sons were minors and sole heirs. We packed up the things out of Jason's trailer and took the truck, which had Jason's name on the title but had to wait for the death certificate to red idle it in Paul's name. But the ex called Jason's sister, demanding the truck, saying it was hers and posting on FB she was reporting it as stolen, etc., which really pissed me off. After we got the death certificate, we went to the DMV and found out that she had stolen the title to the truck by forgery, saying she was the only heir and we couldn't transfer the title. My son was driving around with a packet documenting everything in case he was pulled over for driving a stolen vehicle. We had to get a lawyer and start a special process that took several months before a director at the DMV fixed it, and we were able to title the truck with the ex continuing to threaten and cause problems, and made everyone miserable and cost us several thousand in legal fees. Early last year, we got through probate court. The ex never showed, in spite of saying that she was the wife and sole heir. The court declared the boys as the sole heirs and my wife as executor of the estate in their names. Instead of showing up, the ex sent an email to the court saying she couldn't make it because of work, she doesn't have a job, and that Jason was never around his kids. He didn't miss a single HS football game home or away and never missed a home track meet, and that they were just leeching off his SSI for the back child support. She went on with a bunch of other non-relevant shit just to trash my wife and sons, and pretty much said it didn't matter what the judge said, that she should get everything. During this time, we found out that Jason's name was on the deed of the ex's house. In order to get a reduction in property taxes because of Jason's disabled veteran status, she had filed papers to put him on the deed, but not the mortgage. If she had just left my kids alone, we would have let it go, but she had pushed principal beyond the point of denial. So we filed suit for half the house. Property is worth about $380K. We went to court-ordered mediation, and she rejected a mediated settlement of a fraction of the value, which we would have taken. In April, her lawyer dropped her, and so she got a continuance on the first hearing. She then claimed that she had found a will from Jason designating her as sole heir, in addition to another signed paper that she found as a quitclaim deed from Jason for the house. I did wonder if it was this or her not paying him which caused him to drop her. She was going to go back to probate court to reopen, appeal, probate, and needed time for that, which the judge granted. On Tuesday, finally went to court on the deed to the house. She no-showed. The judge had inquiries to the probate court, and she never filed any papers. The trial lasted less than 10 minutes as the judge recorded the facts and awarded the estate half the property. They will impanel 3 lawyers to determine how the property will be sold, and she's going to lose her house, and for the first time in her miserable life, face the consequences of her actions. FEFO. A mother's instigation, a daughter's completion. I have promised my late friend that I wouldn't share this story until at least a year after her death. That time has passed, and this is nothing short of beautiful, cruel, but beautiful. I'm going to switch to first-person POV. This is the story as my late friend told me. I was an only child to 2 loving parents. Mom had a difficult pregnancy and an even harder labor. It was so bad that the doctor advised that they never try again. Because he didn't want his wife to die, Dad got a vasectomy that was successful. I was sad that I didn't have any siblings, but I had a happy childhood until I was a young adult. When I was in the middle of college, Mom was diagnosed with stage IV HGSOC, high-grade serous ovarian cancer. It's the most aggressive form of ovarian cancer, and Mom's older sister and Mom both died from it. We knew her odds weren't good. I don't know what Dad was thinking. I really don't. But he started an affair with his coworker, a woman just a few years older than me. Coworker started integrating herself into my and Mom's life. She'd go shopping for us, keep the house in order, help me with homework, and even sit with Mom when Mom was going through chemo and Dad and I weren't there. And no, I had no clue at all. I just thought it was coworker being kind to a family going through hard times. Mom fought. She fought hard, but the odds just weren't in her favor. One day I was visiting her in hospice and we were playing chutes and ladders. Mom got real quiet and then she told me, "You do know your dad isn't planning to reverse his vasectomy, right?" I was surprised, wondering what she was talking about. "Yeah, I know," I said. "Why?" Mom just looked at me and said, "I think you'd best keep it in mind." We continued playing, and when I left for the night, I kissed her and she said, "You'll be fine on your own." She died that night. I believe she knew she was going to die that night and didn't want to scare me. Once again, coworker was right by our side. She helped us plan the funeral, brought us food, helped out around the house, and slowly started moving her things in. It was like putting a frog in a pot of water and having the temperature raised. It was slow. It was gradual. A year or so later, she had completely moved herself in and was part of our lives. I don't remember what made me suspicious enough to start digging, but start digging I did. I learned the affair began shortly after Mom's diagnosis. I was sickened, furious, and saddened. I took out my cell, ready to confront Dad and coworker with the knowledge, but something else struck me. See, during one of her visits, coworker mentioned to Mom and me that she wished to have children with her fiancé. Mom knew that the affair was going on, and she trusted me to spill the beans. But I wanted to twist the knife further. As a result, I decided to play the long game. It was a gamble, one that had a good chance of not paying off, but it was one I was willing to take. I kept my mouth shut. I watched as they courted, got engaged and married 3 years later. I squealed with delight when they announced their engagement to me, wore a proud smile on their wedding day, and made a toast at the reception. I even took extra steps to hide test results from Dad's urologist in such a way that coworker wouldn't find it, but Dad would. Believe me, I was internally screaming. I wanted the world to know the way they hurt Mom and me during her darkest hour. I got dangerously close several times. But I said nothing, knowing the payoff would be worth it. Time passed. We played happy family. I got married to my awesome husband and had children. Dad and coworker played doting grandparents, but I knew from the pained look on coworker's face that she was bemoaning her empty nest. Just as I was beginning to give up hope, the day came. Coworker and I had started the tradition of getting together for coffee shortly after Mom's death. We talked girl things again as I internally screamed. Laugh, cry, love, live, that sort of thing. That day, coworker was sad and sullen. I could tell she had been crying. I asked what was wrong. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard why. She was struggling to get pregnant for years, but assumed it was stress from work. Then her periods started coming fewer and farther between. She decided to go to the doctor and find out why. It turned out she was entering perimenopause, and her chances of successfully getting pregnant had dwindled. The doctor told her, in essence, her childbearing years were over. As I crooned sympathetic noises, coworker said, "It doesn't make sense. We tried so hard to have kids, but I wasn't able to get pregnant. I don't know why." It was then that I knew it was time. "You mean Dad didn't tell you?" I said. "Didn't tell me what?" she asked. I was fighting every chance to smile as I tried playing the "it's not my right to tell," and "I can't believe he didn't tell you" cards until she practically begged me. I should have won an Oscar for my performance. I told her about the vasectomy and that Dad had no intention of revering it. You should have seen coworker. She completely deflated like a balloon. Her shoulders slumped, she bowed her head, and she sobbed in her hands. I wanted to rejoice. I wanted to rub her face in it. I knew, though, that would make me look like the bad guy. So I hugged her and rubbed her back, telling her Dad was horrible for not telling her, that she deserved a different outcome, and that he completely wasted her time. Again, I was fighting to not smile. When she left, I told her I would always be there for her. But I knew she wasn't going to be part of my life anymore. Why would she? I was the daughter of the man who betrayed her. Once she had left and I was alone, I wept with joy and relief that it paid off, but also deep sorrow that Mom hadn't been there to see it. That was the last time I saw or talked to coworker. A few weeks later, Dad called me in a fury. Coworker had packed her bags and left, slapping him with divorce papers. She yelled at him for not being honest with her that he had a vasectomy he had no intention of revering, that he knew she wanted kids and that she had wasted all of her childbearing years, and that he had left it to me to tell her. He then said, "How could you do that to us? We loved you." I then said in a cold tone, "You and Mom did a good job teaching me how to keep secrets." I hung up, and that was it. I never spoke to him again either. Last I heard, he and coworker were divorced, and everyone shunned him because of his keeping the secret. I know I won't be joining Mom after I die. What I did was cruel. It was horrible. I should have done what Mom wanted and spilled the beans beforehand instead of wasting coworker's youth and childbearing years. Even if she could adopt, she'd probably die before her children were fully grown. Although, it's hard to have compassion and mercy for a woman who integrated herself into my dying Mom's life, as she was screwing Mom's husband. TLDR, my friend's father had an affair as his wife was dying of cancer. His AP wanted children while he had a vasectomy. He had no intention of revering years before the affair began. Friend waited until AP's chances of getting pregnant were nil before telling her about the father's vasectomy. AP filed for divorce, and friend cut off contact with both the AP and her father. What happens when neighborhood punks decide to beat up veteran son? Apologies for the length, I'll be sure to include a TLDR at the end. All names have been changed to protect the innocent. This is actually a story my dad told me about one of his childhood friends, George, who recently passed away. Dad and George grew up in a booming city in what's now known as the Rust Belt. You were pretty much guaranteed a job at the major car plant in town. You were pretty much guaranteed a job at the plant in town as soon as you got out of high school. George was one of those people. Dad wasn't. Dad accepted a scholarship to his dream school to study engineering. During the weekends and holidays, he'd come home and hang out with his buddies, including George. One afternoon, Dad gets a phone call from Grandma. George had been jumped after work and had the metaphorical tar beaten out of him. For a while, it looked like he wasn't going to make it. By some miracle, George pulled through but was in such bad shape that he had to retire early and go on disability. While on one of his visits home, George's dad, Walter, pulls Dad aside and asks him if he knows a guy named Flynn. Dad had heard the name was one of the local troublemakers. He asked Walter why, and Walter revealed that the wallet had been found by George's body and given to him. The paramedics thought the wallet was George's. No, I have no idea why they didn't check on it. Unfortunately, the city was going through financial difficulties, thanks to corruption and mismanagement, to the point that they didn't have enough money to pay their police officers during the weekends. No, I am not kidding. From 8 p.m. Friday night to 6 a.m. Monday morning, there wasn't a single police officer on duty. Since the assault took place on Friday night, there wasn't much anyone can do. Dad asked Walter what he was going to do about it. Walter looked at him with a stern face and said, "I take care of my own." Walter was an Army vet who had served during WWII in Korea. He never spoke about his time, claiming he was a radio technician and never left the base. He never breathed a word to anyone, even George's mother, his wife. The full story never came out until after George's death, when a letter Walter had written before his death was found in George's possessions. After realizing that Flynn was one of the people who had destroyed George's life, Walter got in touch with his friends. He was a personable guy, you know the type, the kind who makes friends in 5 minutes. They all agreed that something had to be done. And thus Operation George's Revenge was born. Walter and his friends began observation of Flynn and would keep tabs on him. It took several weeks, but eventually Flynn and his buddies Mac and Zeno were overheard bragging about the attack. Knowing who to attack, they moved to the next steps. Walter's friends, some of whom worked in high places, decided to make some phone calls to their friends in the plant where all three worked. See, these friends were Union State was closed shop at the time, and disgusted about what happened to George, they decided to make things difficult for them. They'd remove vital tools for emergency maintenance at the last minute, put them in positions they weren't good in, and rearrange the schedule so they got the worst shifts, to name a few. They also began a whispering campaign so everyone at the plant knew what had happened. In this city back then, who you knew and what everyone thought you've done was enough to make or break you. The goal was to get them to quit, and after a year or so, all three had quit, frustrated with how they were being treated. But Walter and his friends aren't done, not by a long shot. A few phone calls and anonymous letters later, Flynn, Mac, and Zeno were unemployable in the district. Because they hadn't been fired, they weren't entitled to severance or anything. Soon their money ran out, but they couldn't get out of town because everyone knew from the whispering campaign what they had done to George. For the rest of their lives, Walter and his friends kept an eye on Flynn, Mac, and Zeno. Just when it appeared that they had an out, the whisper letter campaign would start again, and they'd be denied an out. The three men ended up homeless and destitute alcoholics who couldn't even get state aid. And this is in a state that is known for its generous aid for those in bad straits. Walter and his friends made a contingency plan to continue this until the three men were dead using the next generation. So those men would never forget what they did to George. Nobody was able to find out anything about Flynn, Mac, and Zeno. But I wouldn't be surprised that they're still stuck and miserable. TLDR. Dad's childhood buddy was jumped by 3 troublemakers. Childhood buddy's veteran father and his friends decide to make troublemakers' lives heck for the rest of their lives. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine has been cooling for 10 years and counting. I, 40F, have been married to my husband, 44M, for 20 years now. We have 2 kids, 16F and 13M. My husband is what I would consider a high earner by middle-class standards. Also, strap in folks, this is going to be long. I've never told anyone so. TLDR. My husband cheated on me. I dragged the guilting for almost a decade, then ruined his life and chased him out of town. 10 years ago, and by complete coincidence, I found out that my husband has been cheating on me with men, and that from before we got married. We live in a smallish town in the south of the USA. Him coming out as gay will have consequences. I believe that is the only reason he has not come out to anyone. First, here's how I found out he was cheating on me. He got sloppy, left a credit card bill for a secret card in the pocket of a coat. While going through it, I found all the telltale signs of infidelity: payments to a hotel in a nearby county, restaurant bills, gifts, flowers, condoms, and lubricant, etc. I started camping outside the hotel on days he told me he would be late, and I saw him bringing different men there. I am very good at compartmentalization and have a great poker face. Comes with growing up in an abusive household. So I was able to give myself the time to cool off and to come up with what I should do. First thing I did was getting an STD panel since I didn't know how safe he was with his partners. It came out negative. Then I convinced him that we should use condoms since I was having side effects from the pill. He was okay with it. I had a long think, and I came up to the decision that I was not going to confront him, nor was I going to leave him. He was able to provide me a really good lifestyle, one that I would never be able to afford with my high school diploma, a cleaning lady, a nanny to help with the kids, regular spa days in a country club, a new car every other year, luxury family vacations every year. He was a good dad, a good partner, the cheating aside, and really good in bed. But I was not going to let him have a single guilt-free week in his life. That would be my revenge. I started small, planning great date nights for us, telling him that I felt our relationship has cooled, that I wanted the spark back. Then I would sometimes slip into conversation some tea about a cheating husband, a gasp gay man that has been using his poor wife as a beard, complimenting the only gay couple we know for having the courage of being real men, who were out and proud of themselves. On the other hand, I would praise him as the perfect husband to anyone and everyone, especially if he was in earshot. The amount of guilt gifts I got was astounding. The man was even sending me flowers weekly. It continued the same way for years. I could literally see how much it was weighing on him. Me. Well, my parents were part of a commune with the concept of free love. I was the same. I just considered myself in an open marriage. It seems that cheating is easier to ignore if you are not that big on monogamy in the first place. And my husband was keeping me satisfied, so I felt no need to find a partner of my own. Then 4 years ago, I guess he met the love of his life. He started seeing just the one guy. I was seriously thinking of ending the whole thing, especially since I have started a business by then, and was able to bring in enough money to support myself and my kids while maintaining my lifestyle. But then he went and introduced his side piece to us. He fucking brought him into our house, introduced him to our kids, and that was enough for me to keep tormenting him. Apparently, he was a new friend he made while golfing. He started hinting at moving to another state, one where it would be easier for him to come out. I refused. I told him that my business was here, and I was not going to start over in another state. Also, the kids had their friends and extended family here. It would be unfair to uproot them. Then he started trying to start arguments. I guess he wanted us to fight, then for me to ask for a divorce. I just stopped all those arguments in their tracks. I would just agree with whatever he said. He was right, I was wrong. And to make it up to him, how about a nice dinner and some great sex? He hated that. I knew from spying on his phone that having sex with me felt like cheating on his BF, the audacity of this man. I also knew that his BF was pressuring him to leave me almost every day. He was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He started drinking, and when it got too heavy, that was when I decided that enough was enough. I wanted to ruin his life, not his health. Also, I grew up with an alcoholic father and did not want that for my kids. So I gathered all the evidence of his infidelity over the last 9 years. Photos with different men, conversations, his Grindr profile even though he no longer had one. Everything. Then I hired a divorce attorney and mailed the evidence to his employer. He has a morality clause in his contract, and adultery breaks it. All his relatives, including parents as well as our church, I was never big on religion like him. It was like a bomb exploded. He was fired. The congregation turned on him for cheating, not for being gay. Let's keep that straight. I would never allow me kids to be part of a church that discriminated against their father, even if he was not out. His parents wouldn't take him in after I kicked him out, and he was shamed publicly. Gotta love that small-town gossip mill. And the cherry on the top. His BF was run out of the town, and he couldn't follow him because he wanted to fight for custody of our kids. Now, almost a year later, I am a free woman. I got to keep the house, my car, and my business. He got 75% of the retirement and investments accounts, but he won't be paying alimony. I got full custody. He got visitations. I also got child support. He had to move 6 hours away to find a new job. Couldn't put the last job he worked at his whole life as a reference. His relationship with his family is rocky. His reputation in town is ruined, so he can't move back anytime soon. The love of his life left him for good, and my kids only tolerate him because I did my best to shield them and to tell them that he is still a good father to them. I also made sure to treat him politely, never talked bad about him, and had a lengthy talk about how their father being gay is okay, it's who he is, and that it was not his fault. That the only wrong thing he did was hiding it from me. So I guess the results of his cheating was years of guilt followed by a ruined life. Edit, let's make something clear. I am not the good person in this story. We were both bad. I am not here trying to get pats on the back or to be told that I did well. I know that what I did was messed up. I am here because I wanted to tell someone, and I can't do that IRL.